Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another medicinal episode of The Gold Standard with Alan Mosley. And here's your host, Alan Mosley.
Does that mean that we're going to be FDA regulated now?
Probably.
Shit.
Like milk.
And then I just said shit.
Ah, see, you come right out of the game and, man, wash your mouth out with soap, boy.
People don't know who are watching this at home, but we actually don't necessarily film every show
in order.
Yeah, in order.
Right. Sometimes we do things out of order just to mess with your head.
Sequentially. It's not necessarily sequentially,
it's
as I just, my phone buzzes.
Right.
But we had done the whole show up to this point clean.
Really?
And then literally the very first words I say.
You got a dirty mouth.
Yeah. I ruined it. Yeah. So now we have to put the little warning.
Gonna have to get you some Orbit gum.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
See, we need sponsors.
We do need sponsors.
This is why we need real sponsors.
Yeah, we do.
So tell everybody, we're thinking about running some commercials during the show. So, hey, look, if you've got a business that's got some national attention, hey, and you want to run an ad spot, give us a shout.
Or if you just want to give us money.
Yeah, or just give us money.
If you just give us money, we'll run a 3-minute thing that just says, I gave you money. And then we'll do.
Or better yet, we can insert your ad.
You know what? I was just thinking we need, because we got this big event coming up this weekend.
Yes, we do.
I need more stuff on my desk.
More stuff on your desk. What, like tchotchkes?
Well, like I need to dress it up.
Like some bobbleheads.
Like you ever watch when Craig Ferguson had the Late Late Show? Like he had he had his old phone and he had his big mug and and like he had his little whistles and horns and stuff.
I know what to get you. A Mike Maharrey bobblehead.
I do need a Mike Maharrey bobblehead.
That would be great. Where can we get a Mike Maharrey bobblehead?
I just need to dress up this area right here.
Hey, why don't some of you guys go ahead and send Alan some stuff to put on his desk, and guess what? We'll put it on the show.
Yeah, well, if you have a business that has your logo, I'll actually put it right there,
right, and
it'll be front and center.
Yeah,
and that'll only cost. What do you think?
I don't know. We'll think of something. Maybe
1.5 mil.
That's what come on.
That's what I'm just kidding.
Right now, I'd be happy with 50 cents.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm definitely getting my money's worth out of you. There's no doubt about that. Guys, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of The Gold Standard. I am your host, Alan Mosley, in case you hadn't already figured that out.
Yeah, he is.
With producer Blake Osborne.
That's
me. This is at least the third time I've actually introduced you on the show.
Third time. I'm starting to get taken.
You have to keep up with the show, or you don't know who everyone is.
Who's that guy always sitting on the couch that he's always poking off of? Will?
Or if you're over there, like you see me just pointing off into the distance.
Sometimes I'm over there and no one sees me, and I like it that way.
Guys, if you want to join us on social media, you can do so at facebook.com/TGSAlanMosley. You can follow me on Twitter, which is @AlanMMosley. Which, by the way, if you're not following me on Facebook or Twitter, you need to be, because last night was a riot.
Oh boy,
we had some thoughtful individuals join us on the page to tell us that they didn't agree, and I actually didn't ban anybody. I didn't ban anybody.
That's good,
because when you come on to our show page and you say something unbelievably retarded, I leave that there for the world to see forever. So if you come onto my page, and I say 2 + 2 is 4, and you say, no, it's 6, research flat earth, bruh, I'm not deleting that.
No.
We're gonna make fun of you. I might retweet or share that for years to come. So just so that you know.
He's just gonna let everybody else who's on the page destroy you for years.
But really, I don't have to do anything. I don't even have to say anything. Other people generally like, hey man, you're pretty dumb. Just letting you know.
Oh,
but you don't actually have to do any of that. You can just go to our website, which is thegoldstandardpodcast.com.
That's right.
You know, we have a really awesome guest coming on after the break.
Oh, we do, don't we?
This is actually our trial run of having breaks and doing segments as opposed to just having a straight feed.
Yeah, we're evolving. Like higher mammals.
Sure. Why not? Does that mean that we're the mutants?
Yes, we are.
Well, we're definitely not the normies.
We're definitely not the normies.
How's the? I want to ask you one thing before we go to the break. How's the government shutdown treating you?
Oh man, it's horrible. There's destruction everywhere. The sky is falling down. Cars are flipping over. It's horrible.
If you guys didn't have the farm, y'all would have all starved.
Oh yeah, we would have died. We've already ate our 9th goat. It's just nothing. We're about to run out of them. We only had 14.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's scary. I can't wash my clothes.
Wait, hold on. You have 14 goats?
Yes, we have 14.
I thought you only had 9 goats.
No, you don't know about Coco the bonus goat.
No, you told me about Coco.
I told you about Coco the bonus goat.
But Coco doesn't count as 5. So how'd you go from 9 to 14?
I had 13, and then Coco was 14. 3 boys, man. You forget I got 3 male goats.
It seems like
I had 3 male goats. I ate them.
It seems like I remember. It seems like I remember way back when you were saying, "Hey, we're thinking about getting goats. We're thinking about starting with like 5 or whatever." Yeah. What happened?
We started off with 3, and then my wife and I got excited, and we bought more than we needed, and there you go. We have a lot of goats. Actually, I didn't eat my goats, but that's okay, just for fun. You know, I would never eat my goats. Never. I don't eat goats.
Yeah.
I raise goats, not to eat them. You don't eat goats. Anyhow.
I bet you can.
People do eat goats, but I don't eat goats.
What does a goat sandwich entail?
I don't know, but it's not a hot dog.
No, it's not. It's definitely not a hot dog. There's definitely not. I've never had goat sausage. So
goat sausage. Well, yeah. There's. You ever heard of curry goat?
No.
Having grown up in South Florida, there was a lot of folks down from the Caribbean that lived in the area. Curry goat, and to find good Caribbean restaurants, pretty good stuff. It's a lot like mutton, similar kind of.
As is often the case on the gold standard, this has gone in a direction I didn't anticipate.
It never does, but that's the whole point. That's why we keep you people on the edge of your toes.
You people.
You people.
We keep you people.
You people, us, all of us together as a universal collective.
Who is you people?
I don't know.
So you keep.
You're the you people.
Yeah, me. You keep me on the edge of my seat. So because this is degenerated far faster than I expected, I think we should go ahead and kick it to a break.
Hey, absolutely.
So we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we will be right back with today's guest.
That's right.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. I am your host, Alan Mosley. This is the Gold Standard episode, what did we say, 46? I think it's episode 46. And we have an awesome guest for you today. Our guest today is Suzanne Sherman. Suzanne is a licensed attorney who quit her practice to raise her children. In 2013, she left California, which good decision on that one, right? To enjoy the peace and freedoms available in a remote location in the mountains of northeastern Utah. She makes radio appearances, hosts a show, and speaks on principles of federalism, history, and liberty. Suzanne Sherman, welcome to the show.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for having me.
Now don't start off with a lie right off the bat as soon as we start the show. No, there's never once been a guest who was delighted to be here. I'm sorry. We're already off on the wrong foot. So, Suzanne, we had talked a little bit on social media before, and you saw an episode that we did recently with our good friend Clay Davis. And you reached out to me and said, "Hey, I want to come on and talk about some of the similar topics that you and Clay talked about. And since you were a practicing attorney, you can give us some in-depth perspective that us normal plebs like me and Blake wouldn't have." So I want to start off right off the bat with an article that you had that was published by the 10th Amendment Center that was states need to step up and protect medical marijuana users from federal gun laws. Now, explain for our guests at home a little bit what the issue is between states nullifying federal laws and pursuing things like marijuana versus where the gun issue comes into effect.
Well, I live in Utah, as you mentioned, so I've been following the development of Proposition 2 from the discussion stage to when it was voted in, and then the shenanigans that you and Clay had alluded to on your episode last week with the legislature finally finding the time to address their constituents' concerns after Prop 2 was passed. So what I started asking Connor Boyack, who is really the brains behind this whole Proposition 2 movement, he worked tirelessly to get this passed. I was against the movement for reasons that we will discuss later. But my question for him was, well, how does this affect people with concealed carry permits out here in Utah? And his response was, it won't affect them at all. My next question was, how will this affect people's ability to purchase a firearm? And again, he said, well, you don't have to fill out, because we're going to get into this ATF form 4473. He said you can go through a private purchaser or private seller. In Utah, you can do that. So you can get around FFLs. The problem is you're still in violation of the law if you are purchasing or owning a firearm, if you are in possession or use marijuana, medically approved or otherwise. So I wanted to interject my warnings and my concern, because I felt that his his answers were incomplete. Now, his goal might be to make sure that some people can have the option, a compassionate option that is otherwise not available to them in the state of Utah. That being said, I believe this law is a bit of a Trojan horse. You guys mentioned last week, my concern was just what you were saying. This sets up a big government bureaucracy, and it's never going to go away. You mentioned the risk of crony capitalism. You have to have a significant amount of money in the bank to have one of the 7 licensed dispensaries in the state of Utah. Utah is a huge state, only 7 dispensaries. For crying out loud, you can find 7 of them in one street in Durango, Colorado. People in Utah, 7 only in this vast empty space. So getting back to the issue with marijuana, medical marijuana holders and firearms, first of all, the CCWs aren't just issued from the state of Utah. They all go through DOJ background checks. And if you think that there's no ability to cross-reference, I beg your pardon, medical records and any kind of DOJ gun checks, background checks, concealed carry or otherwise, this is something people need to be aware of, because when you go to purchase a firearm, you have to fill out something called an ATF form 4473, and it's called a Firearms Transaction Record Form. And you have to fill this out honestly under penalty of perjury. You have to answer it fully and truthfully. And here's what it says. It's a question number 11C, and it asks prospective gun purchasers if they are unlawfully using any controlled substances. So now if you're living in one of the 33 states in Washington, D.C., where marijuana has been legalized from one form or another, you think to yourself, well, I can say no because it's legal where I live. There's a caveat. Right after that, there is a statement in bold letters that says, warning, the use or possession of marijuana remains unlawful under federal law, regardless of whether it has been legalized or decriminalized for medicinal or recreational purposes in the state where you reside. So if you have a medical marijuana license in the state of Utah or any other state where it is legal or recreational, for instance in California, federal law prohibits you from legally possessing, owning, purchasing a firearm and ammunition. Now, they also ask about use or possession of medical marijuana. What if you are getting it for a sick family member? You're in possession of it. This casts a very, very wide net, and that has not been addressed to my knowledge in the states that have legalized it in one form or another, and it certainly hasn't been addressed in Utah.
Now, you had mentioned the phrase that you felt like this proposition was a Trojan horse that would set up a bureaucracy and leave people vulnerable. I mean, do you feel in your heart of hearts that there's a serious risk that this is a strategy that the feds would use to attack people, whether it was just the public at large, or maybe it's one of those things where we'll go after political dissenters or that sort of thing and check their records and see? Are you saying that this just gives them an end to go after people in a legitimate way according to federal law?
And absolutely, because again, the feds can do a cross-check. We all know it's dangerous to be right when your government is wrong. Yes. We've seen them already use the IRS as an instrument as a weapon against those that disagreed with the Obama administration. That was never addressed. There was never any punitive repercussions for such behavior. So absolutely, people can track, people have pictures on social media of their firearms. Then, people like me, I hunt, there are pictures of my animals. And again, with the federal requirement also that medical records have to be electronically kept now, they can access any of this. So yes, even if you don't, if you weren't under the influence or using it at the time you purchased it or possession of it, they could use it after the fact. So the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal also has said that this is not a Second Amendment violation, this federal prohibition against medical marijuana users. And again, this is the problem, going a little bit off topic here, with calling our gun rights and the Second Amendment anything that we call a Second Amendment right. As I explained in another article that the 10th Amendment Center published, how Heller botched the Second Amendment, Antonin Scalia discussed the purpose of the Second Amendment and what kind of guns does it protect. Well, it doesn't protect any guns. It prohibits, emphatically, exclusively, the general government from regulating arms, period. And then when you call, and then he himself used the language, it is a right that pre-exists the Constitution. That being said, you can't carry around whatever kind of gun you want, whenever you want. Rights are subject to reasonable regulation. That's a problem when we get away from calling these amendments rights and not restrictions.
Well, that's, I mean, that very phrase is a dystopian phrase, though, isn't it? When you say the phrase reasonable regulation, because you immediately open up Pandora's box of, well, who defines reasonable? Who are the decision makers? Who are the enforcers of the decisions that are made by the decision makers? It seems like if you, I mean, of course, we're believers of natural rights on this program, and one of the reasons why we often don't go too far into the weeds in constitutional thought on this show is primarily because I feel like there is that inherent weakness that if you're going to discuss the Constitution from the perspective of it was written as a guideline for prohibitions against the government towards the people, then that makes perfect sense, and I would agree with that interpretation. But if you've already moved forward into 2018, where you have a huge swath of not only those that wish to rule, the authoritarian types, but the public at large that have bought into this concept that, well, the Constitution is a set of rules for all of us to follow. When I've never believed it that way. I don't think any of the founders would have agreed with the concept that the Constitution was a set of rules for all of us. It was absolutely only a set of rules for government. But let me get back to specifically the state of Utah. Without looking at things from the federal level, what, in your opinion, would you like to see the state do? And we can use Utah as an example because that's where you're from and where Prop 2 is taking place. What would you like to see happen on the state of Utah level to help protect Utah's citizens?
Well, not just for the state of Utah, but I would like to see my optimal, and this really won't happen, every state having their own decriminalization. And I know that you've had that discussion, decriminalization versus legalization. Yes. When you have legalization, it's just regulated. We have a big government bureaucracy. What I contribute, I consider it like growing tomatoes. If you want to grow your own tomatoes, you want to give them to your friends, you want to sell them to your friends, grow your tomatoes. If you want to go and get them from the grocery store, if there's a certain type of tomato you want, you can go to the grocery store and pick the type you want. And speaking of growing your own, this is the problem too. When I mentioned that there were only going to be 7 dispensaries in this entire vast state, Connor's reaction was, or his response was, well, if you live farther than 100 miles from a dispensary, you will be allowed, gee, thank you, to grow your own. Now, if you think about the severe limitations of the maladies that qualify under medicinal marijuana, don't these people already have enough problems on their hands than being forced to now have to learn how to cultivate marijuana if they've never done it before in their life, go to the expense of getting all the equipment they need to do it? This is not compassion. This is not a compassionate law at all. I think this is a law that now has been forced. They have been forced to comply because of the People's Initiative. Also, the legislature decided now, again, they finally have time to address the issue. This has been taken away, but what they initially added was a 7-member panel to, when it's convenient for them, review the recommendation by your physician, and they'll get to you when they get to you. 7 people on a panel just to review it. Imagine the salaries these people are going to be making. Now, again, they took that away. But this is my problem with setting up these bureaucracies.
Well, it's an interesting concept. Now, I haven't minced words on this program. I'm an anarchist, and one of the arguments that I would make for abolishing the state altogether is precisely that terminology you use, that, well, in specific matters you will be allowed to do X and Y. Well, if you're already, it just seems like it's a losing fight, isn't it? Like if I'm already ceding the ground of I have to listen to you to determine what I am and am not allowed to do, I'm already on the retreat. Does that sound right?
What if I live 90 miles from a dispensary?
Yeah.
Now I'm bedridden. I heard you say you like to go down these wild roads of hypotheticals. Let's get in. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Let's go down that road right now.
Oh, that's what we love to do on the Gold Standard.
And some bureaucrat is going to sit there and say, oh, no, this person can't grow their own because they're not farther than 100 miles. So now I'm bedridden, I'm sick, I've got severe MS, my family member has to go and drive about 200 miles a day, or 180 miles to go and get the weed that I can't grow my own. The other thing too about growing your own, what I've been learning too, is there are many strains of cannabis that address different issues. So how is somebody new to this going to know how to grow and what to grow that will fit their particular malady? Maybe they have something different for seizures, maybe they have something different for MS, PTSD, or certain cancer side effects.
Well, yeah, and this is exactly why we talk about decriminalization, because as you're pointing out, so let's say hypothetically somebody lives 99 miles away from the nearest dispensary, and so they do take matters in their own hands. And let's say it's an elderly couple who is, or with a disabled child, and that's what they need the marijuana for. If I know the feds, and I'm sure you'll back me up on this, if I know the feds, there would be no mercy. If they found that poor family with a disabled child and they took out a yard marker and it was 99.9 miles on the dot, they would just be thrown in jail. They'd get rid of, they'd smelt the key. They drop the hammer on exactly these types of people, and I don't want to segue too much into a criminal justice reform part of the conversation, although I know that's a hot topic in the news right now. But I mean, how many nightmare scenarios have we heard where there's this poor individual, and I mean, by the letter of the law, they were breaking the law. But you have to ask yourself, as a empathetic human being, is justice being served by throwing the book at those people? Like, really, have we saved the world for yet another day if we punish that couple and their disabled child?
Well, and also, this isn't just a federal punitive issue. This is something that's also going on within the state criminal justice system in the state of Utah. On Interstate 70, they had set up, I think I sent you a link to this article,
yes.
They set up a sign that told people that were traveling on this interstate highway, coming up ahead is going to be a road check for drugs. Anybody caught making an illegal U-turn to avoid this checkpoint is pulled over, even though they were not checking for drugs. That checkpoint didn't exist. What they did was they pulled over the people that made a U-turn, the illegal U-turn, and used the premise of a traffic violation and the evidence that they were trying to avoid a drug search as probable cause. So to search the vehicle. While these people are being detained, a dog is sniffing the vehicle, and at that point they check for drugs. There's no legal justification for doing this, but now that the state of Utah is going to be understanding that there will be people legally using marijuana, well, what's to stop other people from using it recreationally? Because now that it's here, we're going to check all these cars and what are we going to have? Roadblocks all over Utah, and then if you try and avoid one, they're going to sniff your vehicle with a police dog. So this is a Trojan horse. I think ultimately we're going to see less freedom than the more they use to justify the proposition.
Well, let me ask you this. This is a little bit of a change of topic, but it's on the same road. This is something that I discussed with our mutual friend Mike Meharry of the 10th Amendment Center and Clay Davis as well, which is, so you were a practicing attorney, so you would have a much more informed decision or opinion on this than I would. Let's say hypothetically marijuana is rescheduled. And so so a lot of these issues go away in the federal sense because it's rescheduled. What then happens 24 hours later to the untold amount of nonviolent drug offenders currently incarcerated?
Well, what we are seeing right now, San Francisco, I think Illinois, maybe New Jersey, they are actually vacating and expunging the records and releasing people. Yeah. So I think that's really a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I definitely think that's a step in the right direction. Call me a cynic. I mean, if anyone's ever seen this show, they know that can't be right. Alan's not a cynic. But call me a cynic, but my default position is don't trust government. If there's one issue I have with the public at large today, it's that I would argue maybe not even that long ago the default position for the public at large was distrust of government, and I'm deathly afraid that today the default position is to trust government. And I think that's just abysmal. But with that, default position.
That's precisely why I didn't get a concealed carry permit. You know, when I lived in the state of California, I took the classes. I was an instructor. I actually taught the legal, what they call it, Section 3 of the NRA, personal protection in and outside the home classes, but you're still not going to get a permit issued to you. It is what they call a may issue state, so it's up to the jurisdiction or the discretion, I should say, of the local law enforcement officer in your community, in charge of your community, and Sheriff Lori Smith was issuing none. So I came to Utah, and it is a shall issue state. It is non-discretionary. If you're a law-abiding citizen that can have a firearm, they must issue you a license if you've met the requirements. That being said, I still did not get one because you know what? These all go through the Department of Justice. It's a de facto form of federal gun registration. I think people that do that are absolutely crazy. So now you've gone to the feds. They know you have firearms because you have your permit. And now you go to your doctor because it's legal in the state of Utah to get some, medicinal redress for what these ailments are that are covered by that. And if the two shall have some, for whatever reason, cross over, you're going to be in serious trouble. Yes, again, they can take that federal gun restriction away, but we're still left with the Utah's draconian laws with regards. I mean, we've got 0.05 for alcohol.
I saw
so
that.
They set up these roadblocks, and now because we have people using it medicinally, they're going to have, I think, more of these roadblocks.
Now let me ask you this, just purely on your opinion, because you live in Utah now. Were you originally? Were you born and raised in California?
I was.
Okay, so you were a California native for your whole life, and then moved to Utah after the fact. How long have you been in Utah now?
It will be 6 years, Memorial Day weekend this year.
Are you surprised? And now I know you said that for your own reasons that we've touched on the show, you weren't a supporter of Prop 2. But were you surprised that Utah has moved the needle at all in that direction? Utah as opposed to a state like California or a New Jersey or a Colorado. Are you surprised that Utah has made any of the changes it's made?
No, because a lot of people are moving here. The demographics are changing, and I alluded to that in the article as well. So we are seeing a lot of progressive changes in Utah. A lot of people from California that, unlike me, choose to bring California's values over here. I moved here because I appreciate and like Utah's values. And, their liquor laws are a little bit draconian, but I chose to be able to have the freedom to have my firearms and to defend myself and my family. That was more important to me. And, that's the essence of federalism. We talk about that. I know you had Clay here. You're friends with Mike Meharry and Michael Bolden. That's federalism. If we want one solution coming down from Washington, D.C., I'll tell you what we're going to end up with. We're going to end up with Utah's marijuana laws and California's gun laws across the board.
Yeah, exactly. Now you're sounding like me. Now you're now you're hitting my level of cynicism. Let me ask you this. Do you feel like this is because I love the 10th Amendment Center. I'm a member of the 10th Amendment Center. I support them. All those guys that you just mentioned have been on this program at least once before, if not multiple times apiece. But is it an inherent weakness of the nullification position that even if you're able to get some traction on the state level, you're always opening yourself up to potential abuse at the federal level?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look at the case of Gonzalez versus Raich. California had Proposition 215, which originally legalized medical marijuana, and a woman named Angel Raich was a beneficient of the ability to have her own marijuana. She had tremendous debilitating pain and an illness that was just destroying her life, and the only relief she was able to get was from medicinal marijuana. Well, enter the feds, the DEA comes in while the sheriffs are standing by, takes all her plants, takes the marijuana that she has, and she went back into suffering. And you know, this is the problem. We talk about more than just nullification, but interposition. What does interpose mean? To get between. The states, and this is the point of my article, need to stop the feds from this unlawful activity. So the Prop 2 legislation says, look, don't worry, wink, wink, no state resources will be made available, and Mike Meharry refers to that as commandeering, will be made available to assist the feds in pursuing anybody that's in violation of federal law. But they're not going far enough. They need to stand up and say, no, you will not take away the firearms of those people in Utah who are lawfully using medicinal marijuana. No, we are going to ignore this FFL 4473 document until you take that out of there. The problem is the FFL dealers will be out of business. They'll lose their licenses. So at what point, where do we draw the line where the state says, we're not going to tolerate this? It's one thing to ignore. It's another to step it up and say, we will not tolerate you coming in, taking these people's plants, taking these people's guns. Not going to happen.
So you would make the argument then from a legal or an authoritative position that if an individual state, in this case Utah, decides to nullify a federal act or a federal prohibition, and they pass a different law in their state pursuant to what they believe is correct interpretation of the Constitution, you feel like that if they're going to take that step, then they are then duty-bound to protect their citizens from agents outside of their state coming in to, I mean, effectively rob, steal, hurt, kidnap their citizens.
Absolutely. Otherwise, they're leaving us vulnerable. Mm-hmm. So look what happened to Angel Raich. So they took away her medical marijuana. She had to suffer. And this went all the way up to the Supreme Court, where Antonin Scalia, the patron saint of conservatism, said, well, you know, as long as the policy is in conformance with a greater program, meaning the Controlled Substances Act, it's going to be okay. So he takes unlawful activity and justifies it by an unconstitutional federal act. That is not conservatism.
Well, we'll have to have you back.
Or actually, it is conservatism. The conservatives love their drug war.
Yeah, exactly. I was just about to say, well, we'll have to have you back again someday to have the conversation of who is and isn't a true conservative. We have the conversation of who is and isn't a libertarian on the show all the time, and I know that pushes a lot of people's buttons. But Frank, if you know me, you know I don't care if I'm pushing people's buttons or not, because frankly, I don't want to be associated with people that think that a philosophy or something is one thing, and it's another. We were talking about the Constitution in constitutional interpretation just earlier this show. I don't want to have a conversation with someone and for them to feel that we're talking about the same thing, that this is what the Constitution stands for, but in reality they're 100% sold on federal supremacy, and if you say the word ratifying convention, it's just whoosh, it's straight over their head. And so again, I'm not attacking those people and saying they're dumb, because frankly, if they've been educated by mainstream media or public schools, that's what they're going to think. It is. That's exactly what they're going to think.
Well, and you mentioned federal supremacy. I remember I loved studying this. I was in high school. We were talking about the feds versus the states, and what the teacher said was state law can never ever conflict with federal law. Federal law is always supreme, and they mentioned the Supremacy Clause. Well, remember in Article 6, Clause 2, the Supremacy Clause actually says that the Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, shall be the supreme law of the land. And what we see right now is all these constitutional conservatives saying that federal law simply preempts the states without that caveat being in there. So once again, we end up with this Hamiltonian version of America that, eventually devolved into Lincoln's version of America, where we are one united state with liberty and justice for none, really.
You're starting to sound just a little bit like Kevin Gutzman. It's starting to sound like a little bit like Kevin Gutzman. Suzanne, this has been an awesome interview. I've enjoyed talking to you, but I have one more for you to get you on the road. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
I'm so glad we got to the most important part of this conversation.
Amen.
It is absolutely a sandwich. Some people say it is a taco, but that is cultural appropriation. Shame on them.
Thank you. You know what? I knew that I was going to like you. I mean, really, I always put on social media hashtag an inconvenient truth. Look, I know that some people don't like the fact that a hot dog is a sandwich, but that doesn't mean it's not. A hot dog is a sandwich. Thank you so much, Suzanne, for being on the show. Suzanne Sherman, do you have any links or social media or anything you want to share with anybody before you go?
Yeah, you can follow me on Facebook, Suzanne Sherman's The Wasatch Report radio show. We have a network called the Cerberus Radio Network, and you'll see the imagery of the three-headed dog guarding the gates of Hades, only Hades is Washington, D.C. in flames. So you can find us there.
That sounds great. We will share those links. Suzanne, stay right there. We'll talk to you here in just a second. Guys, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of The Gold Standard with Alan Mosley. Remember, you can catch us on social media, which is facebook.com/TGS Alan Mosley. It is Twitter @Alan M. Mosley, but you don't have to do any of that, because you can just go to our website, which is thegoldstandardpodcast.com. I'm here. Blake is over there. You can't see him or hear him. And frankly, that's the way we want to keep it. So for Blake, I am Alan Mosley, and we will see you next week.